morning. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. I particularly like the title of this conference being about the growing importance of social performance management. As Julio said in his earlier remarks, we started as a global task force just 5 years ago with a small group of 35 people in a small room. And today our global task force is approaching 700 members that are MFIs, microfinance associations, investors, donors, policymakers, and then look at this room of 300 people. We've come such a long way in just a very short period of time. And when we started talking about social performance, in the beginning it was considered something as a nice thing to do, not as something that institutions needed to do. And what we're finding now is that many more organizations the growing importance of social performance is showing that no longer it is a nice thing to do, but imperative. It is a need to do to protect the reputation of our industry, but more importantly, to improve the lives of our clients, as Ken Lord so eloquently gave in his opening remarks. The task force vision is for social performance management to be integrated into standard business practice. It's just a regular part of doing business. And considered fundamental to achieving the full promise of microfinance. And we'll talk about what we mean by the full promise of microfinance. So we'll start by the definition of social performance. For many of you, the next few slides will be review of what you have been doing in practice. But we wanted to revisit what we're meaning when we say social performance for those of you who are new in the room, so that we all have a common understanding of what we're talking about in the next 2 days. So the definition that the task force put together was social performance is the effective translation of an institution's mission into practice. And this is in line with generally accepted social goals in microfinance. Serving increasing numbers of poorer and more excluded clients sustainably, improving the quality and appropriateness of financial services through assessment of client needs, increasing clients' social capital, assets, income, and access to services, reducing clients' vulnerability, and improving social responsibility of the MFI, not only to the clients, but to their staff and to the communities that they work in. As you will notice, all of these goals have the word client in them. Social performance is very client-focused. And the most important word in that definition is translation. Because we're not just talking about a nice mission, but we're talking about how can we improve our management practices to translate that mission into practice. Just like financial performance, social performance is deliberate, not incidental. So the challenge then is to manage our social performance. What is explicitly defined and measured is what an institution manages. And we've been very good about managing our financial performance because we're expected to measure our financial performance. And now we need to start doing that with social performance. Defining a mission is just the first step. Stakeholders actually have to define very specific social objectives and then measure their outcomes against this desired performance. So the way we try to explain how social performance management should be part of something that we do on a regular management day-to-day basis, is to give an example about financial performance. Let's say a director of an MFI told you that she is reaching 100,000 clients, that her loan portfolio increased by 20% over the last 12 months, that the repayment rate of her clients was 96%, and that operational self-sufficiency is 115%. You'd probably think that this is a good program that's performing well. But what if you found out that these numbers were based on her observations when she visited the clients once a month in the field? What if it was based on verbal feedback from credit agents? And what if this is what the institution hoped they were doing? We wouldn't take her performance numbers seriously because they were based on anecdotes, not financial performance data. And as an investor, you certainly wouldn't take this data to make investment decisions. So if we don't accept anecdotes for financial performance, why have we been doing this as an industry for social performance? For far too long, we've relied on the anecdotes and the nice stories about clients that we post on our website. What the Social Performance Task Force put together is this importance of actually collecting the evidence, of finding the data to back our claims. At the heart of financial performance is the sustainability of the institution, which is very important, making sure that we're going to be around to provide the services. But at the heart of social performance, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, is the client. And you need to have these dual objectives to accomplish the mission of your organization. There are 5 dimensions when we talk about social performance, and the agenda over the next 2 days will actually go quite deep into these different dimensions of social performance. We'll have examples from the panels that go into each of these dimensions. But the way we like to describe this translation of mission into practice is to get MFIs to revisit the intent and the design of their programs. The way that we start social performance analysis in our organizations is to revisit our mission and our stated objectives. Are they specific? Is there something concrete in that mission statement that we're working for? And if it's not concrete and specific enough, then we want to get organizations to revisit what the anchor of their institution is, what's driving them as an organization. Then we look at the internal systems and activities, and what this means is what are the activities that are actually taking place within your organization that are backing up those stated goals, those stated objectives. Are systems designed to achieve those social objectives? Are you incentivizing your staff, both in terms of your social performance goals as well as your financial performance goals? Staff incentives are really a very key part of this indicator category. Then we move to what we call outputs. And these are the characteristics of an MFI's clients and whether or not products are designed to meet their needs. This is different from outcomes, which we use to talk about the changes that are occurring in the lives of clients. We want to make sure that changes are occurring, whether they're positive or negative. By knowing the outcomes that are taking place and the changes that are taking place in the lives of our clients, we can then use that information to improve our operations. The last part of the arrow, which we make a little bit smaller, is impact. And this goes back to what Ronaldo was saying, where we started with social performance, is we used impact assessments earlier on to prove what we were doing. But what impact assessments are is they're often very expensive to undertake, and they give you a story at one point in time. And what we are trying to stress at the social performance task force level and for the social performance movement is rather the first 4 categories, because the first 4 categories is what takes place every day in the management of your organizations. And every day you can improve what you're doing if you're paying attention to those first 4 categories. If you're more proactive and more client-centered, then hopefully the impact will come. But at the very least, you're knowing on a day-to-day basis what changes are occurring in the lives of your clients. So what we've been doing over the last 5 years as a task force is we've taken this initial framework that I just described to you and the definition, and we translated that into a group of indicators. These are the social performance task force indicators that are being collected by the mix. The mix has information from over 200 microfinance institutions that have reported in the last year, the majority of them from Latin America. You are the leaders in this reporting. And I won't spend too much time right now on the specific indicator categories because we'll have a panel on that tomorrow. But the purpose of showing you the indicators is what we really want to stress is that this is not just a reporting tool. These indicators and this report framework is something that we encourage all MFIs to look at, because when you read through the questionnaire, when you read through the indicator framework, it gives you an understanding of all of the dimensions of social performance that we're talking about. It's not just the results, because that's what a lot of people think social performance is the results. But it's the process by which you achieve those results and the process by which you can constantly improve your organization to achieve positive results. So we encourage all of you, if you have not already done so, to visit the social performance reporting framework so that you get an idea of what indicators you could be thinking about as an organization for your operations. So in the next slide, please. So in combination with the indicators, there have been a variety of initiatives that have been developed over the last few years for organizations to help to collect that information that's required in the reporting. And you'll see that the tools focus in 3 general categories. There are tools that focus on strategy, which is basically business planning, strategic planning, staff training, incentive systems, market research, to policies and compliance. Many policies and programs have been developed over the last 2 years to strengthen our client protection measures within our institutions. The SMART campaign has been very active globally to reinforce basic client protection principles. Microfinance transparency is another initiative that has started to provide much better information to clients about how we price our products, how we communicate interest rates to our clients. There's also been quite a bit of work on human resource policies. Mission Project's been working quite a bit on that in the Latin American region. And then the achievement of social goals is the last category. And for many of the countries in Latin America, there are now tools, the PPI and the PAT tools, that have been used to measure the poverty levels of clients incoming, and then also to look at their progress out of poverty over time. So these are just some of the tools that have been developed in the last few years that can help institutions to institute these changes within their organizations to help them in a very practical way on a day-to-day basis measure and manage towards these objectives. All of the information on these tools is available on the sptf.info site, and I'm sure the Mission Project and Red Camif also has information on these tools as well. But there's on the final slide, this is all available to you. There's different resource websites where you can pick up this information. So I'm going to skip through this slide and the next slide, which is giving more information on some specific tools. The next slide, please. And now that we've talked a little bit about what the social performance framework is, what the indicators are, and some of the tools, we wanted to again revisit why this is important. Why is social performance important? And there are making the case pieces that the social performance task force has written. They're available in Spanish on our website for different stakeholder categories. And the ones I'll focus on in the next few minutes are just the MFI category and the investor category. But increasingly, we're being approached by policymakers and regulators to get more involved in the work of the task force as well, and to understand why social performance is important. So I see working with policymakers and regulators as one of the frontier areas of the task force work. So on the next slide, we'll refer to why it's important, why MFIs are increasingly interested in managing their social performance. And the main areas that was noted by MFIs is that MFIs use social performance to create client-centered products and strong client protection. And that helps them to attract, but more importantly, to retain their clients. There's a certain amount of client loyalty that comes when an organization becomes more concerned about developing products and services that meet their needs. MFIs that demonstrate strong social performance are good investments for donors and investors, and they're starting to hear that from the investors and the donors that they work with. And MFIs that report on their social performance data demonstrate their social focus and their transparency to stakeholders such as investors, donors, and the general public. So some quotes that we have from MFIs from the survey that we did get to the heart of what they've learned in collecting this data. One group in India said that social performance management and reporting keeps a check on our strategies, planning processes, products, and programs, which in turn helps us to meet the changing needs in our community. And the Foncose quote from Haiti gets back to that original house that we showed you in one of the earlier slides about the dual importance of financial and social performance, that neither one in their own right tells you the full story, that you need both the information about financial performance and social performance to understand if you're reaching and changing lives. And investors and donors deserve to know that as well. So the next group that we interviewed were the investors, and to get their sense of why social performance is important. And this is our fastest growing group in the Social Performance Task Force. In the last 2 years, this group has more than doubled in membership, and very, very interested in not only learning about social performance, but incorporating it into their actual practices. So the investors and donors are increasingly concerned with social performance because it helps them make good investment decisions, is what we've heard. When MFIs measure, monitor, and report on their social performance, the information is far superior to anecdotes. The fund managers that come to us say that before they relied on anecdotes, and now the people who are investing in them are demanding more concrete information about the actual social effects and the outcomes. So it's not just driven by the fund managers, but it's driven by the people who are investing in the funds. And social performance data is obviously vital to those who are seeking a social return on their investment. Investors and donors should realize, and I think they do, that they have a very important role to play in helping to advance the collection and measurement of this information, because if they're requiring it in their reporting requirements, then MFIs will see the reason for having to report that information. So we do encourage donors and investors to ask the MFIs to collect that. So two of the quotes that we thought were really helpful from the investors that came back, the Acumen Fund said, we want our investments to go to the best problem solvers, not the best storytellers. And I think that's what the microfinance industry, again, relied on for a long time, was good storytelling. But now investors and donors want the data. Blue Orchard, the reason why they particularly like organizations that are doing social performance management gets back to the fact that they think that helps them retain their clients. They are offering tailored services, they're paying attention to client satisfaction, they're committed to client protection, and they're making a difference in their communities. And all of that is creating positive social outcomes, but it's also creating strong financial performance within these organizations. So now we turn to what we call living up to the promise of microfinance. And this is where we will point out two of the challenges that we're facing in our industry. The first challenge is representing ourselves accurately and honestly, recognizing that institutions have different aims, as Ronaldo said. Not all microfinance institutions have the same aims, and let's be honest about who we are and what we're trying to achieve. This gets at the task force work of transparency. Challenge two is living up to the promise of microfinance and creating positive change in the lives of our clients. No longer assuming it, but being proactive about achieving that change. And that's all related to the work of the task force that focuses on improving practice. So for the first challenge, we are trying to get organizations to be honest about what type of institution they are. And as we see it now, the industry is divided into three categories. Type 1 are the institutions that provide access to financial services for the poor, providing access to financial services. Type 2, and this is starting to increase with the work that the SMART campaign did on client protection measures. Part 2 is now providing access to responsible finance for the poor. So you're making sure that your programs are not doing any harm to your clients and that you're adhering to client protection principles. And type 3 is your goal is to improve the lives of your clients. You want to reach your target clients, you want to meet your target client needs, and you want to see positive change in the lives of clients. In type 3, microfinance is a means to an end. In type 1 and 2, microfinance seems to be the end goal. So what are you doing? Is your objective to provide access to finance, or is your objective to change the lives of clients? All MFIs claim to be type 3 in their mission statements, in their marketing materials, in their websites. All institutions say they're type 3, but in reality, most MFIs at this point in time are type 1 or type 2. And many investors are fine as long as they're getting a return and you're not doing any harm. Many investors are fine with type 2 institutions because they're getting a return and the programs that they're supporting aren't hurting anybody. But increasingly, and as I said, this is the fastest growing group of the task force, increasingly, investors are becoming much more interested in the social aspects and much more interested in learning who really are the type 3 institutions, who really are the MFIs that are working towards achieving positive change in the lives of clients. So through this transparency effort, we're trying to match development objectives of both the MFIs and the investors so that they're equally matched to achieve the objectives that they're both trying to set forth. Challenge 2 is living up to the promise of microfinance. And the first step in that process of delivering services to clients is making sure that we're adhering to the client protection measures, what we're calling responsible finance. And the 6 principles of client protection, for those of you who are not familiar, there is a campaign called the SMART campaign that is working globally to enforce and to get microfinance institutions to at least at a bare minimum within their organizations adhere to basic principles of protecting the client. The first is to avoid over-indebtedness. Second is to be transparent about your pricing. Third is to make sure you have appropriate collection practices. Fourth is making sure that your staff is treating clients well, that you have ethical staff behavior. 5 is having a mechanism for redress of grievances. So if there's a grievance that a client has, that's being properly addressed within your organization. And 6, maintaining the privacy of client data. At a minimum, the microfinance industry should strive to achieve these principles. But again, this is only the first step in achieving the promise, the full promise of microfinance. Responsible finance is essential to social performance, but it's not the same thing. And in many parts of the world, people are doing what we're calling responsible finance now. And they're saying that's what microfinance is, it's responsible finance. But many of us who really have the ultimate objective of microfinance to change the lives of our clients know that that's only one step along the way. That responsible finance can make sure that you're targeting the poor with products and services that meet their needs and that adhere to client protection policies. But in the end, an organization that's focused only on responsible finance isn't necessarily going to be set on addressing outcomes. And for addressing outcomes, that's the ultimate step that we'd like to take, is to focus on the outcomes. And the outcomes that we're looking to achieve are seeing that our clients are moving out of poverty, that there's increased food security, that the products and services meet their life cycle needs, that clients are satisfied and have input, that we're delivering non-financial services as well that look at their development needs, such as health and education, and that the staff and the environment benefit as well. So again, in this ultimate objective, microfinance is only the means to the end. It's not the end goal, it is a means to the end. So in meeting these challenges, the Social Performance Task Force in the industry has developed a variety of tools that I talked in the earlier slides, but I just wanted to reiterate here because these are available to all of you to help you in your work. The first is to, again, encourage you to go look at the mixed indicators for social performance, because then by answering these questions, by looking at that framework, you can find out where your institution is along the spectrum. Are you an institution that's interested ultimately in changing the lives of the clients, or are you essentially doing responsible finance? Again, equally important goals, just being honest about what it is that you're achieving. Second, you can assess your compliance with the client assessment principles with a client protection self-assessment. There is a self-assessment that MFIs can use to walk through the process of the 6 principles that I outlined in the earlier slide. And this is available on our website, also on the SMART campaign website. Number 3, we have developed these tools to measure the outreach to the poor. So the poverty measurement tools, PPI and PAT, are available now in many of the countries in Latin America to look at where your clients are at entry and where they are over time. There's also an interest rate calculator that's available to everybody on the Microfinance Transparency website, which helps organizations give accurate data on the true price of their products to clients. You can use a variety of social audit tools that have been developed by the Mission Project, by Cerise, who you'll hear from later, and also from the Microfinance Center in Poland. You'll also hear from them. These audit tools help organizations clarify their social goals and recommend solutions for improvement. So it's a good first step to take stock of where you currently are and how you can improve your organization. Now the 6th area is focused on social ratings. And the reason why social ratings are so important is for this advocacy component and for reconstructing the image of the microfinance industry. We are really supporting collecting data, reporting data, being transparent about data. But the next and final step of that is to get a rating, which is an external assessment to validate that data. And it's a key component in making sure to policymakers, to regulators who are looking at the data, that they can trust it. So there's a rating initiative fund that's been set up that will help MFIs get co-funding, up to 70% co-funding to get a financial and social rating performed on their institution so that they can post that as backup data to the mixed indicators that they report publicly. So that's part of the advocacy, and it's providing the information that validates the claims that we make as an industry. The final area of tools is measuring client level indicators. Food security surveys, client satisfaction surveys, exit interviews, and market research. And again, the Mission Project has developed a lot of that information for Latin America and is available to all of you. So to end, I'd like to congratulate this region for being the leaders in social performance. In the trainings that we do around the world, MFIs often ask us, why are all your examples from Latin America? Why are you always telling us about what's been developed in Latin America? And of course the answer is because you're the pioneers. You're the ones that are the furthest along in bringing about this transparency and improving practice. And I look forward to hearing about your experience and what you've developed and to the challenges that you continue to face in the next coming days. Thank you very much.